Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galecki, and welcome to the 449th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 71st virtual Imagine lecture hosted by the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thanks so much for joining us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now, we're going to start with our program shortly, but first, a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted during our speaker's presentation. So if you have a question, please type it into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. This program is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and YouTube channels. And we certainly hope you share the link with your friends and networks. Now, our featured speaker today is George Scott. George is a Buffalo native. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Psychology and an honorary doctorate degree from Canisius College. He has been a professional musician and arranger since 1979. And served as the president of the Colored Musicians Club from 2000 to 2020. Now he serves as board member of the Colored Musicians Club and co-curator of the club's Jazz Museum. He is also a chairman of the Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor Commission, board member of the Michigan Street Preservation Corporation, advisory board member of the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame, and band leader of the George Scott Big Band in his spare time. All right, today's program will follow a discussion format. I've asked George to, let's just engage in a discussion, and then folks get your questions ready so that you too can be part of that discussion. George, I'll start with the obvious question. I titled this Looking Back and Forward. Look back. What's the history of the Colored Musicians Club of Buffalo? And then we can talk about looking forward. But let's look backwards first.
Okay. Well, if you look back in the early 1900s, there was a law in the books that was called segregation. And with that being said, any musician of color back in the day could not join the union at the time. So the black musicians would have to more or less request the opportunity to have their own union. And it was tough. I mean, it took the local Buffalo musicians several years before they would finally get that opportunity to have a union, which would take place 1917. I don't know if that's the same year that World War I started. One of the founding fathers of that union, which would be known as Local 533, was a gentleman by the name of Jesse Clipper. And he would go on to join the army and fight over in France. And it would take him being wounded 4 times before he dies of his wounds over there in France. So he's looked upon as a major hero over there in France. But the thing that's interesting about it is when you think about the segregation and the treatment of African Americans back in those years, that this guy still believed and loved this country so much that he went over there and served, this country, even though with all this. And unfortunately, he never had the opportunity to, realize the union, growth and of course, the club that would come out of that would be nationally known, internationally known, even from, past all his time being on Earth. But again, these musicians were special because they weren't just great musicians. They also were very community minded. And this thing of reaching out is kind of unique because you don't see musicians today doing that, but these guys cared for each other and they looked out for each other and they looked out for the community. And that's what makes that union so special, and eventually what the club would grow into be.
Well, that's a good background. Tell us what the activities are and how they've evolved over the years, going back to literally that 100th anniversary that you would have celebrated a few years ago. How has it evolved? And then we get to the present. What does it look like today?
Okay. Well, again, with the union, as they grew, they were one of the really first unions to set up a health insurance for their members. They set up a credit union, which was unheard of even for regular businesses, but they had it. They were one of the first to actually have a woman voted in as president over the union, which again, back in those early years was unheard of. But they also did stuff for the community. They had Easter egg hunts for the kids. They had these major Easter balls for the kids. And but more importantly, they used to give lessons to the kids, which I was a benefactor of lessons. And you know, they really wanted to grow a community and join forces with other projects, churches, schools, or whatever, to build a strong community of you know, young Black women and men. And this is sort of where we're trying to get to now. We want to get back to giving the lessons again for our kids, having programs, after school programs for people where they can come and check out not only our history, but the history within that community as well. And just be kind of like a driving force to positiveness.
Your website, which I encourage folks to check out, really describes an illustrious history. A lot of well-known folks came through Buffalo. Do you want to comment on your own experiences with them and things you've heard from your mentors?
Sure. Well, the one thing that made Buffalo special, back in the day, they were like maybe the 5th largest city in the entire country, but they had the 3rd busiest railroad station in the entire country. And being not too far from New York and not too far from places like Philly and Chicago, you had a lot of musicians that came through here. Not to mention that we had a large migration of African Americans that came up from the South that found jobs right here in Buffalo. So with that being said, there was a lot of money to be made as a musician coming into town. And you know, Buffalo had built up some of the best jazz clubs in the country, and which, you know, you would hear about not only across the country, but I still get emails today from all over the world asking about certain clubs and places within Buffalo that hosted some of these famous artists that came to Buffalo.
Well, describe that. Was there a regular weekly program there, or that you sponsored? How did that look? Especially go back to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. I don't know when its peak was, or maybe its peak is today. You can fill us in on that.
Yeah, well, you know, back in those early years, the radio or television wasn't as dominant as it is today. So live music was the way to be entertained. So a lot of people, when they got off of work, you know, they would actually dress up, you know, suit and tie and everything, and they would walk around the corner to their local club. And it was nothing, and particularly in Buffalo, to walk around the corner and you have Lena Horne singing in the place, or, you know, you got Dizzy Gillespie or Miles Davis or Coltrane. You know, we're talking major artists here in Buffalo, New York. I mean, just think if you had somebody in today's world playing here weekly or monthly in Buffalo, and all you have to do is just walk around the corner to see them performing. I mean, that was the type of atmosphere that it was. And of course, you know, the newspaper was, you know, people went to the newspaper, and or word of mouth. Hey, you know, next week so-and-so is coming to town. And that's how it kind of went, you know. And people knew each other and talked to each other. So it was more kind of basic communications.
In many ways, the city's peak population was about 580,000 people in 1950. And then it started its decline that we've had literally for the last 70 years and just stabilized in the last decade. What does your organization reflect that peak type of time period as well, 1950, and then a decline because the city's declining overall?
Yeah, well, it was a combination of the decline of the city, but it was also the change in the music as well. You know, because when you start talking mid to late 60s, you had rock and roll that took off big time, R&B took off big time, and now instead of having these big combos, you had these small groups. You had these big time crooners, you know, or duets and stuff. And so nobody could afford or would really wanted to see a big band anymore. And even jazz took a change from, you know, that big band sound to now everybody was doing that, what you call contemporary jazz, you know. So it was jazz with R&B or jazz with rock and roll. And it was a different, you know, kind of a mixing of the sound. And so for all those old timers that used to play, you know, they were pretty much phased out altogether, pretty much. You know, well, plus the neighborhood changed too, you know, with, you know, people leaving the city, you know, Black folks who lived downtown there moved away. And so you had a lot of buildings that were no longer used for jazz clubs anymore.
Well, there was a good article that gives us a good background of where you've come from. Presently, what goes on at the Colored Musicians Club? But describe a week, a typical, how does it look? Could somebody knock on the door and there'd be somebody on the other side to answer it? Or is it only by appointment? How does this work?
Well, up until the COVID, I mean, it was like you can come down and, you know, we welcome everybody. Now, again, it was a members club back in the day, and we still have members, but we're open it up for anybody to come down. Typically during the week, we would have various bands that would rehearse. And again, it was free to the public to come in and listen. You know, we have a bar that we would serve drinks and stuff. It wasn't mandatory to drink, but you could drink if you wanted to. And then on Sunday, which was the special night, that was the jam session night. So again, if you played or you sang, or even if you did spoken word, you know, you were invited to come up and join in with the musicians who were up there and you know, show what you can do. And back in the day, that's how a lot of musicians, including myself, learned how to be a better musician, joining in those jam sessions. You know,
you also mentioned to me that currently you're working with youth as much as possible. Would love to do it more. Describe the types of programs that you become a mentor to others.
Right. Well, again, I told you when I was younger, a lot of those, you know, old timers would, you know, take me under their wing and, you know, show me how to play different things, what to listen for, different things like that. So we had put together a program where we were teaching the kids pretty much what I learned and stuff. And then again, with the COVID and with the construction of the museum back in the day, that kind of slowed down. We had to go off site, but now with this new project that we have going, we plan on bringing back those lessons into the building. And we want to bring the school kids in there so that we can show them the history, let them hear the various sounds of jazz and, you know, learn how to play. Because again, these schools, they don't have music programs anymore in the schools like they used to. I mean, when I went to high school and grammar school, there was music program all over the place. But now it's hard to find a music program in the city schools. So, you know, hopefully if we can get a few of these kids interested in playing, I mean, that's this, you know, one less kids that's going to get in trouble in the street.
What keeps that from happening? a
Well,
program like?
well, right now, we're just now trying to get out of this COVID. And again, we're just starting on our construction of the addition, which will host a lot of that training and stuff. So knock on wood, if we can get going and get it done, maybe by this fall, we can have it open and start getting kids in there.
Sounds like a plan, George.
Yes, it does.
Talk to me about the piece of the Colored Musicians Club in the larger context of the Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor. What's that look like? You're involved with it. A new plan was just listed and noted in yesterday's Buffalo News. Bring us up to date on that.
Okay, well, pretty much as I mentioned earlier, that part of town was the nucleus, or where all the African Americans settled, particularly when they came up from the South. Everybody moved there. Even my parents, they lived on Clinton Street, right around the corner from the Michigan Baptist Church, which they would become members of. And as a young baby, I was actually a member of that church, with Reverend Nash as the pastor. But again, that was like the hub of the Black community, because Reverend Nash would go on to, he would help to build the YWCA, or YMCA, I'm sorry, and other programs for the community. And then Raymond Jackson, who was one of the co-founders of our union, was actually the head Mason for Buffalo for many years, would become the national Mason. But, his program was always helping the community, with financing and this, that, and the other. Reverend Nash would actually be the founder that would eventually, the NAACP would come to pass from what he starts here in Buffalo. So again, a lot of national things starts here. The Underground Railroad came through Buffalo, quite a bit of Buffalo. So again, another national thing that came through that area. So we want to have a program to educate our kids about the importance of the Black history that was in that neighborhood, as well as to bring in maybe some startup businesses, and really get that neighborhood back into a place that people would want to come and visit. So outside of seeing our museum, we want them to stay there for maybe an hour or a couple of days just to enjoy that whole stretch. Be like another Allentown, be like another Elmwood, a place that people want to come, visit, shop, explore, and just have a great time.
Well, that's an ambitious goal, but you got to have a plan. And I was very pleased to see the different consultants and people that are imagining how to get from here to what you just described.
Right.
We've got the canal side areas, we've got the museum districts, we've got your area, and they're really not that far apart. You're right around the corner from the library.
Right.
And yet I doubt if a lot of people are just wandering around looking for it, but the Nash House is there, you're there. The church is going through a renovation. I trust that'll be a major tourist attraction. So good for you to be part of this this part of Buffalo's rejuvenation. If you will.
Well, you know what? Buffalo is such a special place. I mean, if you just drive around the city and you see some of these interesting buildings, or you look in a neighborhood and they don't look like your typical neighborhood. And, I know myself, as a youngster, I would always be impressed or amazed by the appearance of some of these places or buildings, and you want to know, why was it built like this, or why did they set it up like that? And this is sort of what we want to do. We want to get people to really engage into why this was made like this, or why things set up like that. And by having these different groups forming these corridors and making it public friendly, we want people to really take their time and explore all these places that they just typically drive by today.
Well, that's a good goal. I'll invite your groups to think as imaginatively as possible as to how to use this digital age we've wandered into in the last couple, 3 decades, and at the same time, you're trying to get people to you to figure out creatively how to get you to the people, whether it's to the school kids, whether it's to the general public, whether it's to the world beyond Buffalo. And that's the challenge, but it's the opportunity of the times. So, does that sound appropriate?
Oh yeah, well, to be honest with you, we worked a year on this, and we actually had this organization, Moody Nolan. They had a staff of people that actually they reached out to the different neighborhoods and the communities and politicians, businesses, and everything else, and pretty much asked them, what would you like to see? Or what would you like to see done better, and things like that. So, this or that, I mean, we actually reached out to the community, and we're still reaching out to the community now to get as much as we can, so we build something that would make this city proud.
Well, that's great. And again, hopefully this program itself can be a marketing piece that you share with others to give a summary of what the Colored Musicians Club and the Heritage Corridor could be. Leah, how are we doing? Are there any questions that we can hear about?
There are no questions yet.
Well, come on, folks. This is your opportunity to get behind doors that, especially during COVID, have not been available to understand. I checked it out a few years ago and just kind of wandered in, and sure enough, walked up the steps, and there were folks jamming and having a good old time. So I imagine it used to go on a lot, and you sure hope it comes back again soon.
Yeah. Anybody have a question like why we still call it the Colored Musicians Club? Maybe.
That is a good question, and it ought to be addressed. Tell us. Funny you should ask. I was thinking that. You said it. Go ahead. Why?
Okay. Well, the reason why we still keep it as the Colored Musicians Club, well, for one, it's a historic name, and that's how we got our national landmark credentials. But two, we want to honor those men that first, made us possible. So when somebody hears or see colored, they're going to ask me, why do you still call it colored? And it gives me an opportunity to tell the story, which I just told you guys earlier, about how this whole thing started and why it's important to, still be a part of this place. So it's more of a lead into the story than anything.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and it gives the integrity of respecting your history, where you came from, and how you want to be known today.
Right. I mean, I look at it as the same as looking at the American flag. I mean, people may say, well, we should change the flag. We should make it look, but we don't, because that flag stood for World War I, that flag stood for World War II, this and that and the other. So, that's why the Colored Musicians Club is sort of like our in that way.
We do have a few questions that have come in.
That's great.
Can folks go to concerts at the CMC?
When we're open, yes. Now, every summer we have our jazz festival. It's called the Queen City Jazz Fest, and the way things are looking, I think we'll have our festival again this year. So, and it's always the last Saturday of July. So we'll be making an announcement on that probably within the next month or two.
Okay, and is the club building located downtown open to the public? And if so, what is of interest to the public within the building?
Well, once this, well, we're in the middle of this construction. Oh,
Okay.
I'm still there.
Yep. Go ahead.
Am I still there?
Yes, you are. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. Yeah, we have it open to the public, and again with the museum, it's a nice educational day that you can bring in for the kids. And what's great about the museum, it's interactive, so you get to hear music, you get to see music videos. There's even an area where you can manipulate the music, you know, with equalizers. So you can, let's say, take out the bass player, or you can take out the horns and just listen to the song in a different way. You know, as well as, you know, different talks and stuff from docents or people like myself. The upstairs, you know, once we get it finished, you'll be able to go upstairs and check out the club, what it was like to be in there, listening to bands playing or jam sessions going on up there. We also offer the bar and the downstairs to be rented out. So let's say if you had a business meeting, you're bringing in people from out of town, you want to take them to someplace different, you can rent the club out for things like that. So yeah, we definitely open it up for the public.
And do you expect to have any programs for children?
Yes, again, once we get the you know, the work done, we definitely going to be working with the kids as far as having tours to come and check out the museum and things. And as I mentioned earlier in my talk, you know, getting the lessons back up there, you know, for the kids. So they want to learn how to play trumpet or sax or guitar, bass, drums, whatever. We want to get them into playing again.
Someone else asks if the Sunday jamming sessions are coming back since COVID, and if not, do you have any idea when?
Well, again, we're in the process now of getting this construction work done, and also they're going to be doing some restoration upstairs. So we will probably be down for probably until the fall again. But once we get things done, we'll have the jam session and all that stuff back up and running again. So yeah, we'll definitely have you in once we get it done.
I have a comment. The word colored now includes Black and brown folks. Is there any change to programming or outreach to be more inclusive?
Well, I mean, the history was, you know, based on the jazz, the R&B, naturally. I mean, pretty much all spectrum of our music. And again, with younger participants stuff, I'm sure we'll get into some of the newer things. But you know, again, we'll welcome everybody. So, you know, we played a lot of different things up there other than jazz. So, you know, we're definitely open to any and everybody.
Great. And the last question we have, is there any known footage or recordings of some of the classic artists you mentioned earlier, like on YouTube or other platforms?
There's tons of YouTube videos of some of these musicians playing.
Here in
some
Buffalo?
not so much in Buffalo, but you know, but definitely there's tons of videos out there. But there's a video of Stanley Clark, who is a top-notch bass player, and he actually speaks of one of our musicians, Alvin Shepard, very highly. And then I know there was an audio that was done with, I think it was Duke Ellington, and him and his big band played here in Buffalo in the auditorium. And he actually shouts out to Buffalo during the course of this performance. And when I say auditorium, I'm not talking about over there near the waterfront or where the Key Banks Arena was. You know, the sanitation department that's on Broadway?
Yeah.
That used to be the auditorium at one time. And it was like just 2 doors down from the club. So they played over there in the old odd there.
How many folks could fit into that auditorium?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, hundreds, thousands?
Well, I would say probably a few thousand, maybe 5 or 6. I don't know exactly offhand, but they used to have like major boxing events in there. They had a big bowling tournament in there, and again, musical acts played in there. So it was quite the popular place back in the day. And then eventually, I guess, as the population changed and the neighborhood changed, they moved it over to where the arena is today.
Set your sights on that building. It's a classic downtown building that might have a reuse someday as you get your footing, George.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's been talked about doing some stuff with it, so we'll see.
That's good. Are you comfortable? Because for years it seems like there's been a start-stop to the notion. You've got a wonderful bit of signage now that goes over in a nice arc form over Michigan Street. Are you a believer that all the pieces are in place, organizational, people-wise, the right people? The money hopefully will come when the right people get energized to do the right things. And it sounds from the newspaper like you're on the right course. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I've been on this project, for some years now, and this is sort of like my baby. But yeah, we have some really key people in there, people that are serious, people that are specialists, and as well as some of the politicians too. That means a lot as well. But the community, which is the main thing, they're behind this, and they see this as a thing that's going to be beneficial for them, because they took the chance to move over here, to live here. And so they want to see that this grows into someplace special, so they feel even more happy with their decision to move over here. So that's why it's going to be a winner for everybody.
That's the spirit. And again, you emphasize the word everybody, and I want to emphasize that as well. Once you get going, I would think it's the playing of music that unites, not whether it's black, brown, white, or any other color skin. It's the desire to play music together. Am I correct with that?
Oh, yeah. And just to kind of let everybody know, I mean, even though it was called the Colored Musicians Club, did not mean there was no white musicians ever in that building. In fact, the Colored Musicians Club was probably one of the first clubs in Buffalo that actually had segregated audiences as well as integrated, forgive me, Florian slip, integrated bands and audiences.
Huh. Well, that's something to be noted for and valued.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I've noticed others, Terry Alford, I saw mentioned in the paper. I see he's in our audience. Leah, if you want to just turn on his audio and see if he wants to just make some concluding remarks here about the corridor, I think they should be added to this program. Can you do that?
Yeah, I've asked him to unmute.
Okay. Good. If he wants to, oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yeah.
you're on, Terry.
Okay. Hello, and first of all, boss, you're doing a fantastic job. It's good to see you all here. We refer to George Scott as our boss. He's the chair of the Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor Commission. So first of all, thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I promise, George, I'll keep it really short. But as George already said very well, our strategic action plan and economic development strategy was officially rolled out this past Thursday evening. And ever since then, we've been getting a lot of media attention, not surprisingly, because just like our corridor, this seems to be a lot of activity, a lot of economic development and restoration and expansion projects, construction projects in and around the city of Buffalo, and if I dare say the Buffalo Niagara region. We're quite excited with our strategic action plan. moving forward, because it'll serve as the roadmap to take us to hopefully the next 200 years that furthers enhances our city, in particular this particular part of our city, as a heritage destination that we can all be proud of, no matter our ethnicity or where we come from, what walks of life we might find ourselves coming from. This is very important to our community in particular, but our city specifically, as we continue to show our city and our particular areas of our city in a great light in the early years of this new century that we find ourselves in. So saying that, we're quite excited and working with all of our 4 cultural anchors, what we call our founding anchors, which includes not just the Colored Musicians Club and Museum, but the Michigan Street Baptist Church, the Nash House, and Waffle Black Radio History Collective. Our commission is really set to partner with these fantastic anchors, as we call them, to serve as the economic engine in terms of tourist and heritage destination that I believe will really spur economic development. It'll act as the economic engine in developing the entire 3.5 miles of our corridor moving forward over the next few years. So again, as George would have probably already stated, we invite all your listeners, all your participants today to sort of keep informed in terms of what we're doing with our activities and our programming. Even though the anchors, including the Colored Musicians Club and Museum, will be either involved or soon to be involved with their capital construction projects, we will still be working with them to provide programming that'll include virtual tours, in-person tours, and other exciting activities starting in the spring into the summer and into the fall later this year. And we invite all of you to stay informed and to participate in those activities. If you're looking for more information, I would always encourage all to just go to our website, MichiganStreetBuffalo.org. Again, that's MichiganStreetBuffalo.org. Everything is spelled out, unfortunately. Or you can simply call us at our office at 716-322-1002. Again, that's 716-322-1002. And we'll definitely get you updated in terms of what we're doing. So thank you again for the opportunity. And I look forward to seeing you all as we soon will be enjoying warmer months, hopefully sooner than later. Thank you.
Well, should be coming on tomorrow, a warmer day.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much for that closing remarks. George, thank you so much. It wouldn't be appropriate not to ask you one last question. What's your musical instrument that you bring to the band?
Well, it's actually saxophone was the instrument, although my first instrument that I ever played was guitar. And before I go any further, I want to shout out to the love of my brother's life, Laura Jones. We lost my younger brother last month to cancer, but we both started out doing guitar, and then I got into sax later. But he was an inspiration to me why I still play music today. So
it's been a tough month for you and a tough journey since he first came down with that. You were telling me, and our hearts go out to you, and now it's onward and forward for you.
Right.
Remembering, though, always remember.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate all you guys, folks. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you can come back here again next Tuesday, February 22nd on Zoom, as we're joined by Joe Stallman. Now, he's the executive director of the Seneca Iroquois National Museum at Salamanca. That'll be an important program, and I'm hoping you can join us. Again, remember to share this video with your friends and networks. and get the word out to support both the Corridor and the Colored Musicians Club here in Buffalo. I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and good day.